single one of us has what we call an internal representation of the world. And that is how we have languaged and therefore programmed the external world, how we've programmed that and represented that internally in our own brain. And that's called our internal representation. And that's made up of our beliefs, our talents, our values, our habits, fears, experience. And what they found was that when we activate a program in the brain, so when a program in the brain, which really is just a series of neurons, like an electrical circuit that becomes live. When that becomes live, what happens is it starts to change the biochemistry in our body. And so what it does is it starts to change what we call our emotional state via that biochemistry. And because we've got different chemistry traveling around the body, it starts affecting our physiology. Whatever program we've activated in the brain determines how we start feeling emotionally, and attached to that emotional state is a way that we use our physiology or our body language and our body language. And so as external information comes through from the outside world, it hits our senses, and those are visual, auditory, sound, kinesthetic, feeling, and smell and taste, olfactory and gustatory. So that information hits the senses, and it is then filtered through what we call perceptual filters. The filters filter that information based on what is in our internal representation. So if I have a fear about something, I'm going to filter that external situation very differently to somebody else who might enjoy it. If you take something like snakes, somebody that has a fear of snakes and is then exposed to a snake in their external situation is going to perceive that through their perceptual filters very differently and have a very different experience to somebody that loves snakes and finds them fascinating and interesting. Our emotional state at any given time also affects how we filter information. Have you noticed that when you do wake up in that kind of state, when things are good and you're in a good, happy space, everything in life looks pretty rosy. But something just has to change that emotional state and suddenly everything looks doom and gloom. And we've all had experiences like this. So our emotional state, along with our internal representation, affects how we filter information. Now, to give you an idea of just how powerful these filters really can be, we've all had an experience where you're walking around, you've got your cell phone or your keys in your hand, or they're sitting on a table in front of you, and you've been going, I can't find my phone, I can't find my keys anywhere. Has anybody seen them? And somebody reaches right in front of your face and says, what are these? Now, by using our language, I can't find it anywhere. I can't find my phone. I can't find my keys. That word can't activates a program in the brain that shuts off the part of the brain that can. And so we literally filter that out of our perception. Was it coming through the senses? Absolutely. Did we see the phone or the keys? Absolutely. Why didn't we perceive it? Because by using our language, I can't find it, I can't find it, I can't find it. We've actually programmed our filters to block that out of our perception. And that's a nice tangible example because we've all had those experiences before. And if our filters are that powerful that they can filter out something as hard and physical as that, just think how much of life you filtering out or we filtering out based on how we habitually use our language, based on how we program ourselves. Whatever we say consistently, think consistently over and over and over again through repetition, or if we have an experience that has huge emotional intensity, what can happen is we can establish a program in the brain instantly if it is intense enough, or we do it through repetition. And so some people have got into really bad language patterns where they'll say things like, it always happens to me. Or they'll say, you say, how are you doing? And they say, same thing, different day. Or wake up on a Monday morning and go, oh, it's Monday. And so we use our language in certain ways. Some people use their language in positive ways. So we want to start becoming very aware of what are some of the habitual ways of using our language, and therefore, how are we programming ourselves? Try is another example. Often you hear people say, all right, I'm going to try to do that. The problem is that when you try to do something, what it does is it puts us into almost a holding pattern in the brain. Because if you've ever tried to pick up a glass or try to pick up something or try to do something, you'll know that it's physically impossible. Because when you do something, when you pick it up or you don't pick it up, or you do something or you don't do it, try becomes irrelevant. So we need to be careful of these kind of words because they run certain programs, active programs in the brain, which enable us or disable us, or enable our ability or disable our ability, and shut us off to opportunities, possibilities. However we've programmed our internal representation fundamentally determines how we perceptually experience our world. When you change an aspect of that internal representation, you experience the world differently because you've changed the way that you filter information. Now, what's important to be aware of here as well is that when it comes to talents, for example, sometimes because it's something that comes naturally to us, we often just take them for granted. And we assume, well, it can't be that special. Surely everybody does it. Surely everyone can see it this way. Surely everyone can do it this way. And the reality is that they can't. That very few people can do the things that you can do when you're using your natural genius, when your natural ability. Very few people can see things the way that you naturally see it. And it's really key to remember that we don't want to slip into the habit of taking it for granted, or the trap of taking it for granted just because it comes naturally to us. The second aspect is to be aware that because we don't experience external situations as they are, we only experience external situations as we perceive them to be through our perceptual filters. We can often forget that we're filtering. And it usually happens when we're tired or we're stressed or we're unaware. We forget that we're filtering information, and therefore we're not seeing external situations as they are. We're seeing them as we perceive them to be. So it's important to realize that we are filtering, because when we forget that, we tend to judge. And we need to remember that we all are wired differently. We all have different internal representations. We've all had different experiences in life. And importantly, we all have different talents. And when we realize that, we start to see the value that other people bring because they're different from us. And in doing that, we start to acknowledge and appreciate the unique value that we can bring. That there's nobody else like us on this planet.